How strong are your morals? Well, you're definitely gonna find out when I tell you what happened in Clint Eastwood's 2024 thriller drama called Juror Number 2. You guys demanded spoilers and for the ending to be explained, so here it is. And if you hate spoilers, I'm gonna tell you exactly where you can watch it in the caption. Juror Number 2 follows the story of a man named Justin Kemp. He's a journalist living in Savannah, Georgia with his pregnant wife Allison. One day, he gets a letter in the mail informing him that he has been selected for everyone's favorite civic responsibility: jury duty. They ask each person if there's any reason why they should not be selected to serve on this jury. From my understanding, because I've never done jury duty before, amongst many other reasons, the court does not want someone who is clearly biased, a conflict of interest, or is likely to have scheduling issues that would make serving difficult. Hardships like taking care of a sick family member or having an inflexible work schedule. Justin Kemp stands up in front of the judge and shares that his wife is in the third trimester of a very high-risk pregnancy, aiming for that kind of scheduling and hardship excuse. But the judge was not going for it. He was selected as juror number 2. It's day 1 of the trial and the case is being presented to the court. Kendall Carter was a young woman who decided to have a night out at a local bar with her boyfriend James Scythe. Witnesses saw them together having a great time until the mood suddenly shifted. They were arguing, screaming at each other outside of the bar. This led Kendall, the victim, to storm off into the night, alone and drenched in the downpour. The next day, a man decided to go visit the area to go hiking. Just as he reached below the overpass, he saw something horrific: a young woman horribly beaten and no longer alive. The obvious suspect in this case and the one being charged is her boyfriend, Mr. James Scythe. Not only does he not have the best track record, but people also saw how drunk and out of control he was that night. Also, there was a witness who took the stand who lived nearby the scene of the crime, and he says that he saw Mr. Scythe on the bridge that night, the same exact night that Kendall's life was taken. For the jury, this is an open and shut case. No one wants to be there longer than they have to, so let's just wash our hands with this asshole and justice is served. Well, not exactly. Don't let confirmation bias fool you, because there is something that you need to know. There is a reason why this story began with Justin Kemp. Like I said, he's a loving husband and soon-to-be father, just trying to make a living as a journalist and take care of his family. When you watch the way that he interacts with others, you can tell he's genuinely a good guy. But some of the nicest guys have the darkest secrets. Justin Kemp is all of those amazing things that I mentioned, but he's also a recovering alcoholic. This point of his life came before he met Allison. He had a horrible accident where he wrapped his car around a tree, and he was definitely intoxicated when he did it. This landed him in a lot of trouble. But when he met Allison, everything changed. He changed. He put the bottle down and they started a life together. And you can only imagine how happy he was when he found out that they were going to be having a baby. But then they experienced a horrible tragedy. They were expecting a son before, but then they lost him in a miscarriage, sending Justin into a deep depression. And to try to get through this experience, he continued going to AA meetings. That is until one night, the night of their unborn son's supposed to be birthday. He felt that urge again and drove himself to the local bar. He sat down, ordered a drink, and contemplated for a moment. But then he realized what he was doing. He got up, left the drink there, and walked out of the bar. Now, as the attorney is explaining this case, he has a shattering realization. Justin Kemp was there that night, only a few tables away from Kendall Carter and her boyfriend. He was actually leaving the bar when they started arguing. But you guys, this is a lot darker than a conflict of interest. After Justin walked out of the bar, he went and sat in the car for a moment before driving home. It was pouring rain, he needed to get back, so he started the car and he took off down the road. While on the way, he was passing over this bridge and he got a text from Allison. But the exact moment he looked down, he felt that he hit something with his car. He stopped the car immediately, got out to see what it was, but nothing was there. Nothing except for some damage to the front of his vehicle. Now, this is in the middle of nowhere, so he just assumed that he hit a deer. Maybe it ran off or something. He left, got his car fixed, and went on with life as usual. That is until today, when he feels a knot in his stomach. What he hit that night was definitely not a deer. Now, what would you do in this moment? The morality test. You are Justin Kemp, baby on the way, you're a good guy. This whole thing was an accident, and you didn't even know you did this. Are you gonna tell the judge? Or are you gonna let Kendall's boyfriend, who is known for his erratic behavior, take the fall for you? I mean, he needs to go to jail anyways, right? But on the other hand, he is innocent. He didn't kill Kendall. Justin decides to confide in his AA sponsor, who is also a lawyer, even giving him $1 to activate the attorney-client privilege, which allows Justin to speak freely without getting in trouble. He tells him everything I just told you, but his lawyer is brutally honest with him. The fact that he was at a bar and ordered a drink, based on his past, no one is going to believe that he was not intoxicated that night. There is no doubt he is going to prison if this gets out. A few days do pass and it's time for the jury to make their decision. They sit around a long table and it's pretty clear where the decision is leaning. But this is where Justin's internal conflict arises. He isn't as willing to send this man to prison for a crime that he didn't commit. So he gets the rest of the jury to start looking at other perspectives. Maybe if they just have reasonable doubt to find him innocent, the man can go free and Justin can go free. This is all water under the bridge. For days they discuss without a set decision. And on one of those days, one of the jurors make a suggestion. They suggest that Kendall's death could be the result of being hit by a car and thrown from the bridge. Essentially a hit and run situation. This makes Justin nervous. So nervous that he knocks over a cup of water onto another juror, distracting everyone from the conversation. But the conversation is brought back by another juror named Harold. And Harold is secretly a former detective, one who is now agreeing with the suggestion of a hit and run situation. He even goes as far as getting a list of cars that got work done after the incident, which by the way is a huge violation when it comes to jury duty. But he didn't care. He brings that information in the next day to show Justin, even revealing that he noticed that his car was on that list. But he said that they could just rule it out because there's no way it was him, right? Right? It's time to go inside of the jury room and make this decision, so Harold hands Justin the stack of paperwork so he can help narrow down the search. But Justin has other plans. He doesn't want James Scythe in jail, but he also does not want to be connected to this case. So he does the most unconvincing fake clumsy act, acting as if he accidentally dropped the papers, scattering them all over the hallway. Inevitably, this caught the attention of the officer, and she immediately flags this to the judge. Like I said, it's a huge violation. Now at this point, Justin and Harold are being questioned by the judge. Harold is taken off the jury and luckily is not thrown in jail. And that's because he uses the smoothest get out of jail free card, saying although he didn't uphold his oath with this court, he did so with his oath as a police officer to never betray his character, integrity, or the public trust. As for Justin, he was kept on the jury. Justin returns to the jury room where the other jurors force him to tell them what happened. And why do they have a new juror replacing Harold? This brings back the now forgotten hit and run idea that the jurors had before. And the juror who first brought it up goes even deeper into why she believes that this is the case. She is a nurse studying to be in the medical field, so she does have some credibility in this. But her explanation only causes them to have a split vote yet again on James Scythe's innocence or guilt. And this split vote leads to a back and forth, revealing some hidden biases of the other jurors. One of them noticed that James Scythe had a tattoo on his neck that was gang affiliated, and having experienced a personal tragedy involving this game, he felt something behind that. He is convinced that James needs to go to prison, because regardless of the fact that James Scythe said that he left that lifestyle in the past, people never change. This statement prompts Justin to share his story about how he changed. He tells the story about how he's a recovered alcoholic who was a danger to himself and society. And now because of his wife, he's changed. He's a loving husband and soon to be father. Justin is trying to save James Scythe while also trying to save himself. He's pointing out all the jurors' biases and trying to get them to see a different perspective. But it doesn't work. They still don't have a decision. So they asked to see the scene of the crime. Meanwhile, this entire situation with the documents sparked curiosity in the prosecuting lawyer's mind. Her name is Faith Kennebrew, and it's important to note that winning this high-profile domestic violence case is a huge deal for her, and that is because she is running for district attorney. In the beginning, it seemed like an open and shut case to her too, but once Harold confronted her outside of the courtroom when he was dismissed, she took one look at the documents and it brought her just an ounce of doubt about this case. Faith began doing her own research, looking into them herself, personally visiting each person on that list, alongside revisiting the scene of the crime and speaking to the witness who identified James Scythe. As she moved down the list, one of the addresses led her to a nice little home. She knocks at the big green door and a kind and very pregnant woman answers it. It's Allison. Faith explains why she's there and asks to come inside. They sit in the living room and she questions her about the car, which Allison answers, explaining her husband hit a deer on Brimstone Pass. This does not match up with the case at all because Kendall's body was found on Old Quarry Road. Mind you, Faith has no idea that Allison is Justin's wife. But after she leaves, Allison goes to the garage to question him, giving him no other choice but to finally tell her the truth. Justin lied. That accident didn't happen on Brimstone Pass. It was on Old Quarry Road. But Allison is sticking beside her man. She's not telling nobody. Now back to Faith. She still cannot shake the uneasy feeling about this case. So she goes to the jail to speak to James Scythe himself. She wants to ask him face to face if he killed her or not. To which he stands his ground. He did not do this, even saying that his biggest regret that night was not getting in his car and following her, because if he did, she would still be here today. Meanwhile, the jurors are now on their field trip to the scene of the crime. And while there, Justin begins reliving that night. It's so obvious that there is something wrong with him. One of the jurors confront him. They told Justin that he has no idea what happened that night. And with so much certainty that James did do it, he asserts that Justin doesn't know anything. This confrontation is another test to his morals, which makes him nervous. After this, they return to the courthouse to give their verdict. The judge asks James Scythe to stand as she reads. In the matter of the state of Georgia versus James Michael Scythe, the jury has found the defendant guilty of count 1 malice murder, and he will be sentenced at a later date. James Scythe is going to prison, giving the prosecutor, Faith Kennebrew, a bittersweet win. Soon after, Justin and Allison's baby is born. They seem so happy, but the key word is seem. One night while Justin is putting their daughter to bed, he hears sirens approaching their house. He undoubtedly has a pit in his stomach again. They know what he did. But then the police cars pass. Although he's a free man, he's still imprisoned by his guilt, his paranoia, and this dark secret. Justin's guilt is so bad that it takes him to James Scythe's sentencing hearing. Also there is Faith, the prosecutor. As she waits for the sentencing to begin, she opens a letter from Kendall's parents, thanking her for giving them peace and finding justice for their daughter, sending this horrible man to prison. Now, how could she accept this letter wholeheartedly, knowing that she didn't admit to having doubts about James's guilt? That's when the judge begins to speak. For the murder of Kendall Carter, James Scythe is being sentenced to life in prison without parole. Faith turns around to look at the spectators of the court and notices Justin sitting there, clearly taken aback by this ruling. The guilt of what he did is clearly eating him alive. Or is he just relieved that it wasn't him? No matter what it was, the look on his face brought Faith to a horrifying realization. She goes onto Google and searches up Allison's name, finds her husband, and sees Justin's face. Justin was the one who did this. She confronts him outside of the courthouse, where he congratulates her on winning the election and becoming DA. She responds by thanking him and hinting that she knows what he did. They speak in hypotheticals where he shares it was an accident. He's a good man, and the man in prison for life was a bad guy anyways. Plus, if she pursues him in the name of justice, the people are just going to metaphorically eat her alive for sending the wrong person to prison. Blatant incompetence. How could anyone trust a DA that's incompetent? How could anyone be behind a DA that's putting a good man trying to provide for his family in prison and releasing a supposed criminal? Not only that, a gang member. Where is the justice in that? That gave Faith a lot to think about, because in the following days, Faith can't get rid of this guilt that she's feeling inside. Her morals are at war, trying to figure out what to do. Meanwhile, Justin is trying to move on with his life. He takes some flowers to Kendall's grave, goes back home to his wife, and as they're playing with their beautiful daughter in the living room, there's a knock at the door. Justin gets up to answer it, and it's Faith, standing there with an ominous look on her face. And this is where the film ends, which many viewers are upset about, and I understand because it's like a cliffhanger, but to me it was one where you kind of can guess what's happening next. I'm not a lawyer, and I'd love to hear a lawyer's perspective on this film, but I'm sure Justin is going to prison and James is going to get a check for being wrongfully convicted. But what do I know? I'm not a lawyer. If you know one, tag them in the comments because I want to know what would happen. And what else I want to know is your thoughts on this. What would you do in this situation as either Justin or the prosecutor? And what do you think happened next in the story? Go ahead and let me know in the comments comment section. And if you guys don't know who I am, I'm your new favorite movie girl. Nice to meet you. I love talking about movies, TV, and everything in between, so make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.